What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. It's the Game Week 34 preview. There's not very long until the deadline by the time this video goes out, but I wanted to wait for the final match to finish. Obviously, team selection came out yesterday. Now it's time for the Game Week preview. So I'm going to go through your questions and topics and talk about captaincy as always. Let's get into it. So let's talk about jumping on and off players. And the idea behind that is you bring in a player maybe for 1 or 2 weeks to target 1 or 2 really good fixtures, and then you jump off them again to target a different player. And I've touted this idea of maybe targeting Bournemouth. So you would go for Harry Kane this week, then Jamie Vardy, then maybe Jesus, then Ings, then Calvert-Lewin. And you get 5 different players for the next 5 game weeks, hoping that Bournemouth continue to concede lots and lots of goals. And the problem with that, I guess, is it's actually quite hard to nail every single player every single week. So to get the right pick every single week, you'll see that like I did points prediction videos at the start of the season. You see people on Twitter calling out kind of differential picks and star picks of the week and stuff like that. And they will get it right some weeks, and we'll get it wrong some other weeks. It's the same for me when I did those points prediction videos. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't, and it's very hard to do that. And usually people do this during the season, maybe to target, some people do it with big hitters. So they might bring Sterling in for 4 good game weeks, then bring Salah in, then get Bruyne in, whoever it might be. But usually you're targeting a set of fixtures, maybe 3 or 4, rather than 1 or 2. Now, I'm not really against this. I have gone off the idea of just purely targeting Bournemouth, because using 5 transfers just to target one team doesn't necessarily seem like the best use of transfers. Plus, you don't want to trap yourself with a player that's then got bad fixtures who you might have to keep. Because let's say I go for Kane and I switch to Vardy. Vardy's fixtures after Bournemouth are not that great, so I don't necessarily want to keep him longer term. But if I get other injuries in my team, I might have to take extra hits. So booking in transfers like that is not necessarily the best idea. But at the same time, there is only 5 game weeks to go. And if you're happy with the rest of your team and you just... getting an injury is very unlucky. You can't really plan for that. So if you think outside of injuries, you're not going to want to make too many transfers to your defence or midfield, you can still do this plan. Now, I've talked about this Bournemouth plan. I've probably gone off it a little bit. I'm going to talk about Harry Kane later. But for example, I might bring in Vardy for kind of game week 35 when he plays Bournemouth, and then ship to someone like Danny Ings, who has 3 good fixtures to end the season, chasing golden boots. So I don't have to keep making those transfers. So I can save them perhaps to do something a little bit different elsewhere. So I'm not really against this at all. I think it can be a good idea throughout the season. It can definitely be a good idea now. There's really not much to lose now. There's only 5 game weeks, a very limited time to make up points, especially if you're chasing at this stage. And there are some good form players and there are some good fixtures as well. And like I say, if you're happy with your team, absolutely go for it. I'm just not sure that 5 transfers to target 5 fixtures for Bournemouth is necessarily the best idea. Because if I target 3 players for the last 3 game weeks, and then I've got Danny Ings, who's got like Bournemouth, I think he's got Bournemouth, Brighton, Sheffield United, something like that. He's probably just as likely to score points in those 3 as the 3 players I bring in. So it's probably not worth doing. But I am still probably going to jump on and off a couple of players towards the end of the season, because I'm very happy with my defence and my midfield. Bench boost and free hit. This is coming up every single week because people still have these chips left. They're unsure when to use it. And I know people get bored of hearing you should save it for a double game week, but it just goes to show how easy these chips make it when there is double game weeks. We mostly use them around them, because it's just easy to plan. Whereas now we don't have it, people are kind of confused about when to use them. So basically, I can't answer this for everyone because it really does depend on your team when you might want to use it, especially for bench boost. Some people have Southampton defenders on their bench, some will have Sheffield United, some will have Burnley. You need to look when your 4 players on your bench have the best fixtures. Simple as that. Don't overthink it. This chip is not worth as much as we think in a regular season when we can use it in a double game week, let alone having to use it in a single game week now. So just go for it. If you've got 3 players with great fixtures and one of them's got a bit of a rubbish fixture, just go for it. If they get appearance points, great. If they get any other points, it's an absolute bonus. So there's a few weeks you can use it. I would look at when, most people have got kind of 1 or 2 players from like Southampton, Burnley, Sheffield United, etc. So just look at when their fixtures are best and just go for that. Free hit's very similar. You need to look at when maybe there's a game week where you want to target some fixtures, but outside of that, you don't necessarily want to keep those players. So I keep looking at game week 36, for example. So Chelsea play Norwich. Sure, I might get Pulisic in my team. Maybe Azpilicueta is a good option as well. Probably not got a transfer for either of those players right now. Maybe Pulisic, but I won't get into my own team too much in this. But let's say you've only got 1 Chelsea or 0 Chelsea, but when they play Norwich, you want to get 3. Well, suddenly you've got a free hit to do it. That same week, game week 36, Man City played Bournemouth. Now, everyone's got 1, 2 or 3 Man City players pretty much, but maybe you haven't got the right 3. Maybe you've got, I don't know, Foden, Mahrez and Kevin De Bruyne. Absolutely fine. Perhaps 2 of them play the game before Bournemouth and you're worried about them getting rested against Bournemouth, well, you can use your free hit to maybe get the I don't know, the optimal 3 that you think are going to start. Obviously, guessing Pep rotation is difficult, but you could go for that one. And maybe, you know, Man United played Palace. Maybe you only want to go with 1 or 2 of their players instead of 3. Everton played Villa. Maybe they'll be in a bit of form by then. It's just one of those things. You either use it in 36, I think, if your team warrants it, or you just save it for game week 38 and just go for broke maybe. But again, don't overthink it. Like, plenty of people have used their free hit and their normal team has outscored them. So it's all well and good like loading up on Chelsea versus Norwich. What if Norwich somehow get a win and you've dumped a couple of Man United players and they absolutely smash Crystal Palace? And Crystal Palace have shipped a few goals to Leicester and Liverpool recently, so no reason why Man United couldn't do the same thing. So it is difficult. As a kind of broad answer to that question, I quite like the look of game week 36, but that might not fit your team. You're just going to have to look at your team and decide which players you want to target in which game week. So it's very hard to answer bench boost and free hit for absolutely everyone, and I'm probably not going to keep talking about it every single week because it's just going to be the same answer every time. And then someone asked me for the top team's player options outside of Man United, and to be honest, I'm probably going to say I don't really need to talk about Man City very much, and I'm going to quick fire these. And basically by top teams, I just looked at the top teams in the league. So Liverpool, I still think Salah, Mane, Trent, maybe even double up on defence could be good. I don't see a huge amount of rotation for the likes of Van Dijk. So I don't see them, at least over the next 2 fixtures, they're pretty good. After that, they're a little bit trickier for Liverpool. I'm probably going to sell Salah or Mane this week. Salah, I should say. I don't have Mane. Because I'm just not sure about Liverpool once they start rotating players, and I'm not going to captain them. So for me, like, I certainly wouldn't bring in Liverpool players right now. I'm certainly not saying you have to sell them, but it is an option. Defence-wise, though, I just think I'm probably going to spend my transfers on attack, not defence. And the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold can still return steadily and be explosive as well. So I'm definitely keeping him. Man City, I mean, take your pick. Mahrez, De Bruyne, Sterling, Jesus, Foden, they're all good options. They're all going to get rotated. I still... Like, people are very put off by Jesus. Don't get me wrong, he should have scored against Southampton, but he's getting chances. I just can't imagine he goes the rest of the season and keeps blanking. At some point, he is going to get a haul. So I still think he's a good pick. I think you just bring them in knowing they will get rotated, but they could get big hauls. They've got 5 games left, 3 very good home fixtures, and their last 3 home fixtures are like kind of 3, 4 and 5-0, I think, something like that. So yeah, I'm still looking at Man City for sure. So take your pick from there. Leicester, I mean, that Bournemouth fixture is quite tasty, but outside of that, fixture's not great. Like Arsenal this week, I know people like Jamie Vardy's records, and I mean, I'm not really a big fan of talking about records because things change. Like, what changes right now is Leicester haven't been great, and Arsenal have been good defensively. So suddenly, yes, Vardy has a great record against Arsenal. Is he a great option this week? Personally, I don't think so. But for that Bournemouth fixture, you could go for him. They did play a 3-4-1-2 in the last game, so wing-backs Justin and Chilwell, potentially decent options. But again, the fixtures are pretty bad after Bournemouth, so I probably wouldn't target them. Iheanacho, if you really wanted a big punt, he's playing at the moment in a front 2 with Vardy, a lot cheaper, could be an option. Chelsea, I've already spoken about them. Azpilicueta and Pulisic would be my go-tos. I just think in defence, Azpilicueta is about as safe as it's going to get, apart from the goalkeeper, of course. And Pulisic, look, Williams' return, I made a joke about this on Twitter. He's returned way more than Pulisic since the break, mostly down to set pieces. I think Pulisic's still your goal threat from open play. Wolves, I still think the defence is good. I wouldn't be selling them. I would still be playing them. I'm not massively concerned about Jimenez, but I don't think he's a necessarily absolute keep at this point. Just because of the fixtures, he's not very explosive. He's probably not going to punish you. He is very consistent, but maybe there's better returns you can get from using some of those transfers on other players. So I'm looking at that as well. And then Arsenal, don't rule out Aubameyang towards the end of the season. They got some good fixtures. The next kind of 2 or 3 are tricky, but the last 2 are decent. So maybe keep an eye out on Aubameyang, especially if you've got a premium striker spot. Outside of that, I mean, if you're using a goalkeeper transfer, Martinez looks like a great pick, very, very cheap. Outside of that, I'm probably not really targeting any Arsenal players. Okay, let's talk about selling high-owned players. A few people ask, like, should you sell high-owned players? And people look at ownership in 2 different ways, and I don't think either side is wrong. Like, ownership is a thing. You are playing against loads of other people and the players they own. So, for example, if I was highly if I was highly ranked, which I am not right now, but let's say I was, like I've been in the top 10k before, and maybe I want to hold my position, and there's a player that's 50% owned, and I think they might do okay. I'm not 100% confident they're going to get a lot of points, but I think there's a good chance that they will. Then yeah, I probably would keep them to protect my rank. Some people would say sell them, get a player in that's lower owned and absolutely go for it and increase that rank even more. But let's say you've never been in the top 10k before. Maybe you just want to hold position. Yes, getting in that differential could really help, but it could also backfire if that highly owned player does well. Now, I don't tend to look at ownership throughout the season, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to do it. You shouldn't let it dictate your decisions, but I do think if you're deciding between one or two players, one's really highly owned, you want to protect your rank, and you're not sure whether they're going to do well, but they might do, then yeah, maybe you keep them. But on the other hand, and I'm going to give you two different examples for right now that I'm thinking of. Right, I own Kevin De Bruyne and Mo Salah. They're both really high owned. I'm not sure about Liverpool right now. The form they're in, yes, they've had two tough games, and yeah, Villa defensively right now is actually a little bit of a tougher game. The problem for me is with Liverpool is they're rotating. They might rotate a couple of players each game, and I think that will affect them overall as a team. And with Salah, I'm definitely not going to captain him for the rest of the season. At least I've told myself that, so hopefully I can go through with it. If I really need a Liverpool captain, I can always go Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I'm probably not going to captain Salah. So suddenly, I've got a player that's worth nearly 13 million who is extremely good at playing football. We all know that, and scoring goals. But with a team that might rotate a little bit, and I'm not going to captain him, yes, he's high owned, but I don't care. I think I can spread that money around and get more points elsewhere. With Kevin De Bruyne, it's different. He's still really high owned as well. Big difference though, that Man City team have looked extremely good, especially at home. Granted, they didn't score against Southampton, but they should have done. And they got three really good home fixtures, and I think their last three home results are like 3-4 and 5-0. So I've got Kevin De Bruyne really highly owned, really good fixtures. On penalties, I expect him to do really well over the next 5 game weeks. He's highly owned. I'm not going to sell him, and I'm still chasing rank, but I'm not going to sell a player that I think is going to do really well. And you've heard me talk before, I'm not a fan of going differential for differential's sake. Yes, you get in low-owned players. If they do better than the highly-owned players, of course, you go up much higher in rank. And again, I'm not against that. In fact, the player I'm probably going to bring in this week is very low-owned, and I think he can do well. And part of that is selling Salah. But if I don't, that's going to backfire even worse, and I'm going to get a big red arrow and be even worse ranked than I am. So, for me, if you've got a high-owned player, this is what I would do. If you've got a high-owned player, you think they're going to score really good points, and the player you can bring in for them, you're not sure is going to outscore them, keep them. If you've got a player who you're not really sure whether they're going to do okay, but they could, and you're a bit worried about your rank, you're happy where you are, I probably would maybe look at keeping them. If you're not sure that the player you're going to bring in is going to do better. And if you've got someone that you just think is rubbish now and is not a good option, just sell them. Don't worry about their ownership. If you back your gut feeling or back your instinct that they're not going to score many points, and just sell them. Jimenez, sell him. Salah, sell him. If you think they're not going to do well, that's all I will say. Don't worry about ownership too much, but you can take it into consideration in some scenarios, I think. Harry Kane, look, I've talked about bringing him in against Bournemouth. But as I spoke about just a minute ago as well, I don't want to necessarily trap myself with too many players that I don't want long term. I'm not against jumping on and off players, but I don't necessarily want to do it 5 times over the next 5 game weeks. What I will say is, I'm not sure what people were expecting against Everton. Everton are an extremely good defensive side under Ancelotti, and I didn't expect them to do that well anyway. Now, granted, he did play quite deep again, which was frustrating. He didn't get as far forward and kind of in the box as we saw against Sheffield United and West Ham. But again, they're easier fixtures. Bournemouth is an easier fixture than Everton. Yes, they're probably going to go for it. Maybe they'll catch them on the counter or however Bournemouth might play. We saw them score 2 goals against Man United, and they could have had a third as well. So yeah, maybe Bournemouth will try and take the game to Spurs, but that is an easier fixture for Spurs than Everton. There is no doubts about that. So if you really want to take that punt still, why not? If you can do it with free transfers, great. One of the reasons I'm kind of put off doing it now is it is for a hit, and I think I can do better with those transfers longer term without having to book myself in for a transfer straight away. So I'm essentially saying to myself, can Kane for a hit in 1 week pay that hit back? And I'm not so confident at the moment. I still think it's a great fixture, and if you want to take the punt, absolutely go for it. Captaincy is like a punt even further, but I wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know what people were expecting against Everton. Of course, you would like to have seen them perform better, but Everton are one of the better defensive teams in the league at the moment. So for me, it wasn't that much of a surprise they didn't do well, and I think Bournemouth is a better fixture. Is Harry Kane a good long-term option? Absolutely not. That would be my point of view with him. And then risk. this is very similar to the high-owned players thing, to be honest. I keep getting asked, is this risky? Is this a risk? Should I risk this? Like, what is risky? Again, is taking out a player that you don't think is going to score very many points risky? Yes, if they're high-owned and they do well, then yeah, that's going to lose rank. But only if the player you bring in does worse. I think people forget that sometimes. They say, well, if a player is let's say, I don't know, Jimenez recently, effective ownership was more than 100%. So the narrative that goes around is, if you own Jimenez and you haven't captained him, then for every point he scores, you get a red arrow. Well, that is true unless the player you bring in scores more. I don't know why that never gets said, but of course, if the player you bring in scores more, it doesn't matter what Jimenez's effective ownership is, you're going to get a better arrow. So, like, to give an example, Jimenez's effective ownership is 150%. Right? So without getting into it too much, if you haven't captained him, you own Jimenez, and no one else has played, for every goal that Jimenez scores, you'll get a red arrow. In a certain rank, I don't want to get into it too much, but in a certain rank, right? Let's say the effective ownership in the top 100k is 150%, and you're in the top 100k, you own Jimenez, but you've not captained him. If that's the first match, for every point that Jimenez gets, you'll get a red arrow. But let's say you've brought in Danny Ings, who's playing whoever, and his effective ownership is only 25%, and you've captained him, well, then it doesn't matter. If he outscores Jimenez, your rank will go up. So effective ownership is a thing, and I know why people think about it, but this whole risk thing, like, you need to back your instincts at some point, and I've probably not done that enough this year, and I am going to back it this week, and I'm going to talk later on the deadline stream what my transfer is, but I'm going to back it, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and just go for it. And it is a lower owned player, and I am taking out a high owned player, which is Mo Salah, and yes, if he does really well, that could hurt if he outscores the players I bring in, which might not happen, especially over the number of kind of the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. So this whole, is it risky? Stop worrying about risk, back your instinct. Do you think this player is going to score more? If so, and you've got no other transfers that are better to do, make that transfer. And lastly, let's talk about captaincy. I think very similar to last week. I think the 3 best teams to target this week are, again, Man City versus Newcastle, Man United versus Aston Villa, Liverpool versus Brighton. Quickly touch on the other games. Like, Palace have conceded 3 goals to Leicester and 4 to Liverpool, so not necessarily a bad fixture for the likes of Pulisic or Willian. My only worry is Palace can be stubborn when they want to be. They can defend when they want to be. They can keep the score down, which is what would put me off a Chelsea attacker captaincy. Spurs versus Bournemouth, like I've already talked about. I think Kane versus Bournemouth is a punt. I don't necessarily think it's a bad one, but it is a punt at this point. So captain him is a step even further. Like, if you want to go for it, absolutely go for it. Even when I considered bringing him in, I wasn't going to captain him anyway. So that was my decision. But obviously, if you think he's going to do well, why not go for it? That'd be a huge differential. Sheffield United versus Wolves, again, I just don't think Jimenez warrants a captaincy against Sheffield United. They've got O'Connell back as well now, so it's going to be a tough fixture. I don't necessarily think he's a must-sell. He suddenly feels like people are really, really looking to get rid of him no matter what. I'm not sure he's at that stage yet, but I can see with the rest of the fixtures come in why people are thinking about it. And Sheffield United just not a good captaincy fixture. And then Arsenal versus Leicester the same. That could be a low-scoring game. I think Arsenal defended quite well. I don't think they're going to cause Leicester a huge amount of problems in attack. I can see both sides scoring, but I don't think it'll be high enough to warrant a captaincy. So let's talk about these 3 fixtures. So I'm not going to go through the same points I've already made. So for me, I won't be captaining Salah versus Brighton in case of rotation. Not necessarily him getting rotated, but rotation in that team as a whole. Away to Brighton, could they keep the score down? Potentially. I think Man United did really well against them, and Liverpool obviously could do as well, but they haven't necessarily looked kind of at their attacking best over the last couple of games. Now, granted, if Salah had scored that chance at the start of the Man City game that hit the post, maybe that game would have been a different story, but it wasn't. And yeah, I'd be a little bit worried. Not worried about captaining a Liverpool player, but I just think Man United and Man City provide better options. Now, right now, I say my captaincy is on Kevin De Bruyne. As soon as I saw that he was rested, rotated, whatever you want to say, I thought, well, he's pretty much guaranteed. And I do say that knowing that nothing's guaranteed with Pep, but he's fairly guaranteed, I would say, to start that Newcastle game. They've done really well in their home fixtures. Even in the games they've lost to Chelsea and Southampton, they've still looked like they should have scored way more goals. So for me, that's a great fixture. He's on penalties. He's rested. I'm hoping they'll play Mahrez and Sterling, or one of those two as well. Foden should come in. Hopefully Jesus plays up front too. So I think that's a great fixture for De Bruyne. So that's where my captaincy is. Man United versus Aston Villa is an interesting one because Villa have defended better, at least in terms of stats, and probably from eye test as well when I've watched them, especially against Liverpool. They really kept Liverpool quiet for a lot of the game. They have defended better since the restart. They're conceding way less shots in the box than they did before. Part of that is due to injuries, and they've had to make 2 defensive changes, and that seems to have worked. But on the other hand, Man United probably, maybe arguably behind Man City, maybe the second best attacking team right now as it stands on current form, doing even a little bit better than Liverpool, dare I say it. So, yeah, if you think Liverpool are going to get rotated, then maybe Man United are the better attacking team to target. You know the players are going to start every single week. And if they get an early goal against Aston Villa and Aston Villa have to try and go for it, which I don't know if they will, because to be fair, even when they were behind against Liverpool, they didn't really go for it. Considering the position they're in the league, that's a little bit of a weird decision, unless they're worried about goal difference, I don't know. But if Man United can get an early goal, then that could be a whitewash. And again, Bruno Fernandes looks like an incredible option. The rest of the attackers are all good options too, but I just don't think any of them beat Fernandes for consistency, set pieces. He probably will take the next penalty as well. Let's put it this way. In the last game, he got 3 attacking returns and he didn't even take the penalty. Imagine if he had 4 attacking returns, insane score, and he can rack them up really quickly. Decent for bonus as well. So for me, it's between De Bruyne and Fernandes this week. I've talked about the punts. I don't think Liverpool are awful options. I just think Man United and Man City are probably better. So I'm probably leaning towards De Bruyne. I don't think Fernandes is a bad pick at all. I just, slight worry, not really a worry, but I do think Aston Villa have defended better. And if Man United struggle to break them down at the start, it could be a long game. They surely will score and win that game, but by how many and how many points will Fernandes get versus De Bruyne would be my only question. So let me know in the comments below what you think about captaincy. What about the other points I've made? Have you got any other questions? All that good stuff. Leave a comment below and let me know. So that's it for this video. Make sure to give it a like if you haven't already. And make sure to subscribe if you're new around here. Hit this button right here and you can subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch any of my other videos, they're going to come up to the right of me as well. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Good luck in Gameweek 34. See you soon.